Welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with a couple announcements. First, it's 30 days. Okay, so a couple announcements. Very excited about this first announcement. We are going to be having a flyer, one more flyer up here. We need more board for more flyers, but we will be hosting two call nights. We're going to be hosting two call nights coming up this month. If you're looking to really boost your production and have fun, we are having food, we're having prizes. There's also a production contest leading up to these call nights. Put this on your calendar, September 10th and the 24th, right? September 10th for certain and the 24th.
Yes.
Cool. Couple prizes. We have iPad mini, we have gift cards, things like that, but what does that compare to actually getting more business? Do you know what I mean? So make sure you show up. Again, September 10th, 24th, and we're going to be announcing rules for the contest leading up to it for new listings, buyers under contract, as well as qualified relocation referrals. Okay, so be asking us, Rick, myself, Ruby, Jason, if you have questions about some of the details, but we're going to be announcing this over time to each of you as well. Take part, guys. Anything you can do to break out of the norm sometimes produces new results. You guys know this, am I right? Yeah.
What's the time and the location?
Great question. So it's going to be here on the flyer that you're going to see around the building, but it's going to go from 4:30 to 6:30, and it's just going to be, yeah, they're on the second floor.
The contest is running from the first of this month to the end. So get with your individual coaches or one of us managers, and if you want more details, but everybody can qualify, just so you know.
Yeah, don't make the comparison thinking, oh, so-and-so is doing this type of production. No, there are tickets that are going to be awarded for different things, especially showing up to call night. There are going to be multiple opportunities to win more tickets for the raffle for these prizes. Make sense? And keep in mind, yeah, reach out to us if you have any questions, okay? This is going to be very exciting. Please show up. Please show up. And then I'm going to turn over the time if there aren't any other announcements offhand. Is there something I'm forgetting before I turn it over to Inspiro? And
Yeah, let's have relocation come up real quick.
sure. Yeah.
All right, so how's everybody doing today?
Awesome.
Michael, you know what an upper referral is, don't you?
Yes.
What is it?
When you have somebody outside of your marketplace that needs to buy or sell and you refer it out.
That's right. Okay, so we know we have the contest going. It's up here. So you send out a referral during the next 2 months, and you get qualified to win a shopping spree in the store. You can buy something for yourself, for someone on your team, for clients. Okay, so be sure and send your outbound referrals. And then we've got these really fun posters that we're starting to put together. Mike Kylie did this one. So the world is 70% water. Your Century 21 Everest agent's got the rest. Okay, so these are going to be sent out. I think we're going to do a social media post like this that you can share with your friends and family on social media. So the biggest thing is that your clients, your friends, your sphere all know you can refer them anywhere. Okay, if they don't know that, they're not going to use you, right? So be sure and repost that when you see it. All right, that's it.
Great. Next, we'll welcome up. Hey, what's up? We'll welcome up Inspiro. Do we have Christopher here? Anyone from Inspiro?
Myself.
Welcome up.
Thank you. My name is Paul Jolly. I know many of you, and I'm with Inspiro Financial. We're just downstairs with the affiliate lend of Century 21 Everest. And as many of you know, we have structured the company around your business and trying to be very, very responsive, and we work to be very responsive to your needs out there. And to dovetail into what Heather just mentioned, we got a call today from an individual that's moving from here in Utah to Orlando, Florida. And we're in the process of contacting our affiliate in Florida to basically provide them a very seamless and fluid experience, if you will. And so just be aware that, you know, as we work together, we want to be able to make sure that the client has the outcome that they are expecting, that they get the 360-degree solution that they certainly deserve and that they would expect from yourselves. Just a quick call out, interest rates today, they went down an eighth since yesterday. I mean, a full eighth. That's a big deal.
Yeah, 3.25.
That's a big deal. And there's some hesitation in the market. We don't expect there to be too much other than going down a little more dipping. But again, it varies from day to day. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to provide you any additional information that you require. We were looking to have automatic feeds available to you on Daily Rate Watch. But we know that you are inundated with lots of information, and for right now, we're just going to post it, publicly, so you have a general idea of what's taking place. And of course, interest rates are based upon individual borrower conditions and so forth. As you're aware, we're big on journals, and anyone does not have a journal, needs a refill, we have these downstairs. I have one here available if anyone happens to need it. And with that, one last point is we had an individual come to me and say, you know what are investors doing to the market and creating these shortages of homes? And, according to the Urban Institute, investors purchase about 1/5 of the starter homes out there, okay, generally speaking. A starter home is defined as the third of the lower range homes that are out there. And how do I compete with an investor? The key is because the reason they're hard to compete with because they usually have cash readily available. They're ready to pull the trigger now, and it's typically an all cash deal. How do you compete with that? You compete with it by having your buyer be pre-qualified. That is key. So they're ready to go, they're ready to move, and they're ready to pounce and on an offer. We are, in many instances, when a seller knows an investor is out there, they are more prone to sell to an individual who actually needs and can use the home. Typically, that's what takes place. So appealing to their emotions puts you in the game. Of course, there's sellers out there that they're just wanting cash right now and they're wanting to pull the trigger on the transaction and move forward. But the key is making sure that your candidate is pre-qualified in their purchase, and we can certainly help you with that. Thanks for everything that you're doing out there. We appreciate your association, and again, if we can be of assistance in any possible way, reach out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll just echo, us in leadership, we are receiving a lot of feedback about how happy people are working with Inspiro. So these guys have been doing an excellent job. And I'll really just say this, anytime someone comes to me looking for business, all of us are looking for business ourselves in one area or another. I'd really recommend just give them a shot. And the great thing about these guys is they're always asking for feedback of how they can get better. So I'll just say that, give them a shot and just see firsthand how well they take care of you and your clients. Lastly, Summit, make sure you're going to Summit. Invite someone to come. Not only show up yourselves, but invite someone to come with you. This is going to be hugely beneficial if anyone in here hasn't been to it yet. For those of you that have, you know what a great experience it is. Bring someone with you. And lastly, Toastmasters follows this meeting. If you'd like to see what it's all about, stick around. Okay, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. George Morris.
Awesome.
All right.
Hey, good to be with you guys. Thank you, everybody, for what you're doing. It's fun to see what is happening out there. So just wanted to give a special introduction to this guy right here. He's looking behind him. This is Tom. I didn't know your last name.
Myers.
All right. Tom Myers. So he is a Mike Ferry one-on-one coach, right? Also heads out a number of the different prospecting schools if you've ever had a chance to go down there and spend some time with him. But he's a dear friend of the company and does a lot of great business. In fact, I think Lindsay and Tom are leading out a prospecting school together coming up here in a few weeks, aren't you?
Yes.
All right. Good deal. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Good to see some of you.
Is that gonna be out of this office?
No, not out of the office. But we're looking at doing some of that, man.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
It's only
Yeah.
good to see some of us, not all of us.
Well, I mean, for some of you, it's like me when they announce I'm a guest speaker. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm a guest speaker, but all of a sudden I get a different crew that shows up. See, I get Mr. Ortega here. How are you? Good to see you. Your good friend back there is behind you. Did you see him? Turn all the way around. Have you seen the good your friend? He's trying to hide back there, but I'm not going to let him. So, anyway. All right, good deal. All right, let's get started. So, I'm very, very excited to be with you just because, it's not very often it seems like I get to do the base camp, so they're always a real fun and a delight to be able to be with you. But at the same time, it allows me to be able to have a chance to share with you really, I guess you could say, what is ultimately on my mind and really where my mind is focused on. And also the question I always like to ask is, what do I believe that this group needs? And sometimes oftentimes I'll have people who will approach me after a summit or after a base camp and they'll say something like, hey, I thought you were just talking to me, and who were you talking to in that message? And sometimes it's fair, I will pick on people, and in my mind it's as if I'm like just sitting there talking to them, but the whole group is here. But just know that if you feel that, it may be that I was talking to you personally, but in most cases not. But I'm glad that the message applies. So it depends on how passionate I am about the message, yes. And then I can't get myself in too much trouble. So anyway, with that, you guys know, look, the whole foundation, I'm not going to write it up there, of the company is to always focus on mindset, skills, and discipline, right? Mindset, skills, and discipline. And then you weave it along with a deep level of purpose, right? Reasons that push you into your desires and your dreams. And then, of course, having goals, plans, and schedules that weave around that and along with a system. I look back over the last 25 years, and it was 25 years ago approximately that I wrote those words down. And it was in a meeting that I was in with myself after I had, as many of you know, that sit down with Joan Pate, who said, hey, what are you doing? How could you possibly be beating me on a listing? And I got ahead of myself. Before that, I had written down and asked the question, what does a top producer do? And yes, there's been some refinement to some of those words, and they mean more to me than ever before. But what I have found is that to a conversation, frankly, that Terry and I had yesterday, is that we watch so many things changing so quickly around in our environment. In regards to our families are changing, our lives are changing, the business is ultimately changing. But what I find interesting is that everything that I'm trying to do is to not change certain things that happen within this company. And even though there's some things that evolve into being better, there are some things that never change. And that is that even as we look at technology and we look at all the dynamics that happen with it that are positive, there's also some real negatives. Because what it allows us to do is to stop the one thing that matters most, which is our ability to communicate with another human being. And although it can bring some efficiencies to talking to someone, getting in contact with them, maybe speeding up the process with them, the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, there still has to be some level of communication. There has to be a conversation. There has to be an interaction. And I'm grateful that that has never changed. Because in the changes that have all occurred, the one thing that seems to be constant is the interaction with another human being. And sometimes we will cloak it through emails and texts and voicemails and social media, and so that we never really have to interact. And so the thing that I want to talk about most today and share with you is really the most impactful thing as to where we put our focus and where in which we live our lives, not only in business, but our whole lives, are always based on, and this isn't a magical statement, but I want to break it down a little bit, and that is that it is the questions that we ask ourselves. So I remember sitting in a golf cart with Mike Ferry years ago, and the conversation went like this. He said, you know what I get most annoyed with is people who ask so many questions that they never let you in. And let me explain that. He was explaining this and talking about someone very close to him, and he said, just notice this entire day, he will constantly ask questions, so he never has to actually let you into his life. And so what's interesting, I want you to think about your ability to ask questions. There's people who ask questions who really want to know the answers. Then there's people who ask questions who just simply hide behind the questions. And what I mean by that is that when you ask enough questions and create enough noise and create enough just dialogue to where you never have to share anything, you never have to talk about anything, you never have to have difficult conversations, you never have to explain what you're really feeling, what you're really thinking, what your fears are, what you're scared of, what your challenges are, you never really get to the depth of relationship that even makes any sense. So just think about, we talk about the power of asking questions. And then in the power of asking questions, the number one building block, right, to the way in which we communicate and connect to another human being. But if we take those questions to a whole other level, they actually become a defensive mechanism. They become defense. They become a way in which the questions are asked to where you get to hide. You get to not share. You get to not share your heart, your soul, and you get the ability to be able to hide behind all of your questions. And I just want you to think about how you're approaching the real estate process. I want you to think about how you're interacting with a buyer. I want you to think about how you're interacting with a seller and the way in which you're asking questions and the way in which you're interacting. In most cases, I can just simply tell you that if it's in a way that does not allow an even flow of dialogue, it is unlikely that you are connecting at a deep level. So, look, the number one building block of all great leaders is their ability to communicate. Now, sometimes we get information, we think, and I've been there and done that, where I think I have found something that I believe is so true, and then I actually use it, and I share it, and I take my ego, and I use it literally as a weapon. So just remember that the power of questions can be a beautiful thing. It can also be a real negative thing. It can be something that really tears apart the fabric of friendships, relationships, and interactions between buyers and sellers. So the number one building block that you will learn out of all the skills that you will learn is your ability to communicate. And still, I insist that every one of my kids takes debate. And somehow, my 17-year-old weaseled out of it because of baseball. But he got only 1 year of it. And I sit there and I think about my other son, who now will not admittedly agree that it has been a fun experience for him to be in debate. And that I have now this 14-year-old or almost 15-year-old who's taking debate and he's complaining about it. And I remember saying to him, I said, the number one skill set that you will learn is your ability to communicate with another human being. I would challenge you that communication, yes, you can do it by text. Yes, you can do it by email. Yes, you can do it by slide dial or voicemails. But there are very few people who will really actually communicate. Take a step back and talk. And to expose who you are, to talk about them, to talk about yourself. And we'll say this, we'll say, oh no, selling is about asking questions. Yes, but to Mike's point, if you ask so many questions that you never let anybody in because you hide behind your questions, that is a very shallow place to be. So, with that, I want to talk about just questions in general. So questions are interesting. Today I had an earlier conversation, and I talked about the conversation in regards to that the questions are what get you to focus on, what you want to focus on. Now think about that. Questions allow you to focus on what you want to focus on. But my point to you is that if you find your focus on asking questions like, maybe I should get another job, maybe I should be doing something different, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, I need to be doing that, and you're never really present, the thing that's interesting about your questions is your questions have the power to direct your whole life, right? The questions of why don't I set an appointment versus how can I set an appointment? The difference of should I do something different versus how can I be more committed? The difference of I don't like prospecting versus how can I find the joy and the love of prospecting? Every single time we ask a question, we can put ourselves in a different level of focus. So the key is that if we want to succeed at a high level in business, economics, our families, our health, it is just simply, and it's not like I didn't come up with it. You guys have heard it. You've heard it from Tony Robbins. You've heard it from others. And it's simply this. If you want a better outcome, ask a better question. So if the outcome that you have is absolutely outstanding, then great. Then you are asking yourselves very powerful, compelling questions. But if you're asking yourself questions that are not getting you what you want, then take a step back and recognize that the greatest skill of communication is your ability to ask questions. But not even as most importantly as we talk about to other people, but to yourself. Right? Because if you're showing up uncertain, if you're showing up weak, if you're showing up not being the authority, then what's a better question? A question is, how do I show up? What must I do? It's the what and the how, not the why. In most cases, we'll want to try to figure out why we're doing something, and yet the reality is that it's really it's irrelevant. It's not even important. And the reason it's not important is that it doesn't matter why. Because really the only thing that's going to change it individually for each one of us is the way in which we focus, move our lives, and go a different direction is based on the question that we ask. And the only thing that I've recognized in questions is that when I ask how and what, I move into action. When I talk about why, I go into a place of emotion, complaint, fear, and I sell myself on how bad life is versus what must I do? How must I do this? How can I be successful? How can I sell more homes? How can I be more productive? How can I be more predictable? Look, someone came up with truth. It wasn't you. It already existed before you showed up. The only thing I can tell you is that when we talk of truth and we find it and we find some truth to ourselves and to our lives, is it already existed before you existed here. It's just that you found it. Someone said it differently, repackaged it. You heard it a different way. All of a sudden, you found some inspiration, some revelation. But I can tell you, it is rare that revelation, inspiration, and navigation and direction occur unless you are asking yourself questions that move you into action. Right? Just remember how important it is that you ask questions that direct your focus in a powerful, compelling way that builds the life that you want to have. You could ask the questions of how am I going to survive in this business versus how am I going to thrive in this business. You can ask the question like, I don't know if I'm going to continue to make this much money, or you can ask the question of how can I continue to make this much money. Look, it's just how you focus, right? You can ask the question of I don't know if I'm going to be ready to retire, or I'll always have to work in this business, or what can I do to prepare myself that I get the choice to retire when I want to work, when I want, how I want, with who I want. Just different questions. So just don't underestimate the magnitude of what you ask yourself, because most of the time we're complaining. Most of the time we are whining. Most of the time we're asking ourselves why things are not the way we want them. And then we will say things like, you know what, I'm just going to let the world happen. I'm going to let things flow to me. And that is one way to attract things to you. But my observation is that there is like this dual responsibility within our lives to take charge, to take control, to take action, to move, to grow, to act. And then there's this other side of where we trust, we use grace, maybe the universe, maybe a little bit of luck, maybe a little bit of good circumstance, meeting the right person, having the right situation come along. But in reality, as I sit there and I ask myself, does the law of attraction really work? And the answer is yes and no. But I do believe that if you don't think the right things, if you don't maneuver the right emotions by the questions that you ask, and you don't act out and physically do things, that it is unlikely that you will attract what you ultimately want out of your life. And as important as prayer, meditation, thinking, pondering are, that's one element of the process. The other element is to act, to go do, to move, to make calls, to talk to people, to pick up the phone, to knock the doors, to open your mouth, to say things that are compelling, powerful, and have conviction and authority behind them. And that part, along with the, hey, I attracted these good things into my life, the combination of the physical to whether you want to say the spiritual, the combination of both of those is what seems to create an extraordinary life for every human being. As I watch those who succeed at the highest level, it is the balance of their mind, their emotion / heart, and their actions. So my observation again is that the only way you move into a productive life is to ask yourself a better question. And that the question moves you, right? Instead of, why can't I lose the weight? Why can't I get fit? Why can't I get healthy? Versus, what must I do next? How must I exercise? What must I do to eat right? It is all in the basis of our questions in regards to our health, our relationships, and our wealth, the economics. And it seems to be that as I observe, and I don't think that anyone would disagree with me, you may, but if you do, it's okay. Stay quiet. Just kidding. I'm kidding. But my point is that it is all of it. It's not just one thing. Look, if your place is to believe in a source greater than yourself, then there's a great partnership, and you have a responsibility on your side. It doesn't mean that you may not give up on certain things and look for a little bit of hope or grace, but at the same time, you have a fierce stewardship, a responsibility to act. Your action is a voice, it is a picture, it is a declaration of your trust that all things will work out for the good. But if you choose not to act, if you choose not to do, if you choose not to prospect, if you choose not to go and make the calls without having the outcome you want, but not asking a better question of, how do I get a better outcome? How do I get more recruits if I'm a manager in this company or recruiter? How do I get more deals if I'm a lender? If I'm in title, how do I get more deals? Who do I have to become? What must I do? Versus, man, I don't know. Gosh, Century 21 is just a really hard environment. No one's giving me any business. I don't know why not. I don't know. Versus, hold on a second here. To create more value in my own life, I have to be more valuable to the people outside of me, right? Create value for yourself in the marketplace, and it becomes an instantaneous success. It is the reason why there are attorneys who charge $200 an hour versus $1,500 an hour. There are agents who charge almost nothing to sell a home, and there are agents who charge 7, 8, 10% to sell a home. What I find interesting is that in the power of that value, it is almost always that there was a declaration, a question that was asked, and something that happened within them that created a resolve, a belief, and moved into an action. So, remember, don't hide behind questions. Does everybody know what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
The person who never allows you to even get a question in, or it's like they're always playing Jeopardy, always asking another question by another question, so you never really get to the problem, the source, the person, and you never really get to know them because they hide behind their questions. It's actually really disappointing, and I watch it. I see it a lot. People make it, oh my gosh, George, you talk too much. Maybe. What I have found is that people like an interaction to know each other. So it's really easy to hide behind questions. But I also believe, just getting real specific into the listing and selling process or prospecting process, is that I believe that there are yes or no questions. I think everyone would agree, right? Do you want to list your home? No. Do you want to buy a home? Yes. Yes, no, right? That's the first way. The second way is that there's no question, that there's open-ended questions. And that's really good. So hey, share with me what's important about getting to Phoenix. What's great about moving to LA? Tell me about your home. Tell me what you'd like to buy. Share with me. Help me understand, right? And this is where I'll put this in here. Help me understand, right? Is a great way to move into questions, right? Share with me, right? And then put it here. Sometimes I'll merge these together. What's most important? What's most important? So help me understand, share with me, what's most important are great ways to move into asking questions. I don't care whether you're talking to your teenager or whether you're talking to yourself or whether you're talking to a potential client. But I will tell you that questions are critical. And what you're really trying to understand is this, is what is the destination, right? What is their destiny? What is their destination? Yesterday, my cute little Bella, 12-year-old, I said, hey, do your homework. Love this. This is one of the best little stories for me recently. And I said, hey, do your homework. I said, because if you do your homework, I actually had bought these tickets to a concert. And that she doesn't know about. But I didn't tell her, Rick, what the concert was. And I didn't tell her she was even going to a concert. So she has no idea. But I said, hey, do your homework. I said, because there's a really cool thing at the end of this if you'll just make sure you stay on track. And as I'm walking away, of course, in her passion, she yells, well, I don't know how I'm supposed to do my homework when I don't even know what the goal is. And she screamed it.
Oh.
And she said those exact words. And I turned around. I remember I came back. I was in the hallway, came back through our kitchen. I said, that will make a daily message, just so you know. I said, that is a powerful statement. And she's all, well, I don't even know what the goal is. I said, just hold on. You will. But I said, that is a very cool statement. And I thought to myself as I was listening, I was thinking, you know, it's so true. Like the whole thing, reason why I could spend a whole hour with you guys today. Again, what is your destination? Destination equals, you know, the root of it's destiny. In the questions you ask yourself, you begin to shape your destination. You begin to shape your destiny. You begin to shape the life that you want. And the problem is we'll avoid things and do things. We'll resist things. It's part of life. Stop putting so much like analyzation into like why we don't do certain things and why we don't do or don't do certain things. Just do what you know you're supposed to do. Stop worrying about every moment that you have to feel right about it. Every moment that you feel like writing in your journal. Every moment should you feel like meditating. Every moment should you feel like doing prospecting. The answer is no. My gosh, like Mike Ferry will say that there'll be more days that you don't feel like doing your job than you will. That is a fact. And some reason we get into this like analysis of all the reasons why we don't feel like certain things, and stop it. Just go do it. Here's an easy answer. You're human. That's it. And we always want to stay in the same space that we always have been in. And anything that takes us out of it makes us uncomfortable. And yet everything we want is outside of our comfort zone. Everything. Yesterday I was talking to a potential recruit and I said, just so you know, this is a really hard environment to be in when you don't want to achieve anything or do anything and try to accomplish anything. And he's like, oh my gosh, well, what does that mean? I mean, does it mean like you lead with an iron fist? I wish I had more of an iron fist, Daniel, to like lead. Getting soft. Cuddly. Right? My point is that I want you to do more, and I want you to achieve more, and I want you to demand more of yourself, and stop thinking you have to feel good every minute. Gosh, I mean, like the stories of the Michael Phelps who stood at the edge of the pool every morning, hating and despising the water. But he'd jump in, despite how he felt. 9 out of 10 times, if not, 99 out of 100 times he got in the water. Most decorated person in humanity for the Olympics. More gold medals than anyone who's ever achieved. And you think there was days that he didn't feel like doing his job, doing what he's supposed to be doing? I mean, I watched the average agent in America works, they say, 32 hours. 32 hours. So I just would challenge you, are you one of those people? I mean, if you're a part-time agent by design, that's different. But if you're not a part-time agent and you're really trying to work 40, 50 hours a week, and you're not part of the union, you might consider the fact of treating this like a full-time profession, where you actually prospect 4 or 5 hours a day, thinking in your mind, how is it that someone who makes $8.50 an hour with benefits at Discover Card can stay on a phone for 8 hours, but you, it's as if you have like gone into cardiac arrest and you spend 15 minutes of someone saying, nope, I'm not interested. You're like, can't do it. I can't. I just want you to put perspective as to the people who are on a phone all day. Talking to the Delta Airlines gal. I can always tell whether they're from Atlanta, Minnesota, or Salt Lake City, because that's their 3 bases. And I always, when it's Atlanta, it's always like, have a blessed day. And when I'm in Minnesota, it's, I can't even say it, but I hear it. Anybody from Minnesota in here? Anybody from up there? When they say Minnesota, they say Minnesota. Oh gosh, I can't say it. It says they say it different. And then I can, what is it?
Minnesota.
Yes, there you go. See, Chicago's close enough, isn't it? Chicago's close enough, right? So, and then Utah, it's like the Utah slang. So I knew she was from Utah yesterday, and I thought to myself, I said, hey, how long is your shift? And she said 8 hours. I thought, shocking, 8 hours on the phone. And I bet you she doesn't earn more than 10 or 15 bucks an hour doing it. But she's got free flight benefits. Here's the deal. You could fly first class to every single place in the world if you just stayed on a phone for 6 to 8 hours a day. That is a fact. It's a fact. But some of you will do everything within your power to not talk to people. It's fascinating to watch. All right. Open-ended. Help me understand. Share with me what's most important. And then let's just get what we often put up here, which is there anything else? Okay. And then the other one is, tell me a little bit more about that. Simple questions, right? Again, easy to hide behind, not let anybody in, not anybody know what you're really thinking, but help me understand, share with me. But boy, I could just keep asking, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. Is there anything else, anything else, anything else? And eventually, if I'm talking to a potential seller or a buyer, I will then eventually get the point of, no, there's not. And then I'm going to take all of that I've gotten, and I'm going to then, the bottom thing is to summarize what I hear. And what all I'm going to say is, you know, that's great. What I hear you saying is, Andy, is you want to get back to Chicago to see the White Sox lose again, like they did last night. Didn't the Mets beat them? Who were they just playing? I just saw them lose. Who'd they lose? Who'd they lose to?
They won last night.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, that's why you want to get to Chicago.
But that was a good one.
All right, I'm just kidding. All right, so you're going to summarize, right? You're going to say, so what I hear you saying is you want to get to Chicago, so your White Sox win, right? And you want to move back to where your family is, where your home is, and is there anything else? And then eventually you hope that they say no. And I say that because, look, this is what happens in between all of the questions. But then there's a third component to these questions. So we've got the yes and no questions, 2, the open-ended, and 3, the emotional questions. It's the emotion. It's the why. It's the thing. It's the heart. It's the reasons why they're really doing what they're doing. So when we hear a script, or we'll read a script, or we'll ask a question, we'll say, "Hey, where are you moving to?" They'll say, "I'm moving to up the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon." That's great. How soon do you have to be there? They'll say, "Gosh, we really want to be there in the next 90 days." You'll say, "Great." And then all of a sudden you'll go right to the next script, which is something like, what is the next thing? It could be, how would you rate your motivation on a scale of 1 to 10? I mean, dang, get deeper than that. When they say things like, "I want to move at the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon," what I want to know is, help me understand what's important about Little Cottonwood Canyon. Share with me. Help me understand. I want to know more. What I want to know more is I want to know this, gang. I want to know the reasons. And you can say the motivation, it's another way to say it, but I want to know the reasons of their heart and their soul as to why they're doing what they do. And once you understand that, you are at a whole other level to where literally your closing questions at the end of the day always end up being not so I can help you get what you want, the time you want, won't that be great? It's simpler than that. It's as simple as me saying, "Hey, Michael, let me just ask you ready to get started?" And they say yes. And I close usually at that point because I'm in their heart and soul and we know what's going on. But I then am able to ask Eric, so share with me, how do you feel about what I've shared with you? How do you feel about Century 21? How do you feel about me as your agent? How do you feel about getting started? And then all my questions, instead of avoiding the the depth of, gosh, I don't know if I can say, sign the contract, I get into a place of, well, let me make sure I understand how they feel. And if they feel good about me, feel good about the company, feel good about working together, then how about I just simply say, can I say simply, great, how do you feel about getting started today? It becomes simple because I understand where they're coming from. I understand their heart. I understand their reasons. I understand their motive. That is far deeper than where are you going? When do you have to be there? What is your scale of your motivation? It's what happens in between every line of the scripts. Get deeper. Get more from your relationships. Get to depth. Ask questions. Share. Be vulnerable. Get connected. Talk to people. Be connected to people. And see who will allow you to lead them. You may say, well, that's going to take a lot of time. Yeah, I know. It will. Because there's nothing efficient about it. And you know what will happen, though, is that you'll get better at it. And people will realize your sincerity more quickly. People understand where you're coming from more quickly. Do not underestimate the power of questions. We talked about two things. The questions that we ask of people, and now we first talked about the questions that we're asking of ourselves. Okay, if you are stuck, you feel complacent, if you feel like things aren't going the right direction, if you're concerned, I would challenge you to stop this moment from looking outside of you for everyone to give you an answer. It is fascinating to me, truly, at every level, of how many people look to everyone else to give them the answer. And I am for certain that there are moments where when you hear truth, it resonates within you and you know, man, that is the right answer. That's what I was looking for and that's where I'm heading. But I would argue to you that the answer was already inside of you. All that someone else did was help solidify your belief of what was already true. Because it's already there. I would challenge you to consider the power and the magnitude of who you are. That within you, you don't need to look to any guru, mentor, coach, company, training facility, none of it. At the end of the day, although they will all help, they will help you get better, they will help facilitate your course, but I promise you that all the answers that you all already need are already inside of you. But so very seldom will we go into the quiet space and we will open up a journal and we will ask ourselves the really tough questions. The turning point of my life, right? The turning point of my life, and it wasn't too many years ago, was when I simply said this to myself. It was, I am totally okay with asking any question because I am totally okay with any answer. So what's reality for many of us is although we may already know the answers within ourselves of what we should do, of how we should proceed, of what we should do throughout our day, how we should prospect, who we should call, what we should say, it's a lot safer to blame someone else, to look to someone else, to ask someone else, ask someone, tell us what we should say, tell us what we should do, tell us how we should act, tell us what we should say. That's a lot easier and a lot less hurtful. Because if there's a mistake, you go, well, they told me to say it. But the reality is that everything you want and need is already within you. And yet the problem is very few of us ever ask the real questions. We never ask the questions of what do we really believe? What do we really think? Who should we really be with? What should we really be doing? And just listening. In the moments of those revelations, inspirations, and those moments that are within you, that's where you'll come to know yourself and you'll come to know your path. And each one of us will have different paths. And each one of us will find different truths. And not that one is greater or better than the other, but truths for yourself. The way it works for you. So the easiest ways that I can explain that would be is that sometimes the very same pathway of a diet or nutrition plan is great for you and may not be so great for the other person. But they're both true. And they both can work. And sometimes one is just a little bit better. You know what you need. You know what you're supposed to do. But so seldom will we take the time to step back and just listen. We're so afraid of a mistake. We're so afraid of the outcome. We're so afraid of even the success. We're so afraid of what people will say. We're afraid of what people will do. We're afraid of all these different fears, and yet the reality, we will always look to the outside for answers within our lives. And yet I can promise you, of at least the 48 years I've been on this planet, at least the first time, just kidding. I'm kidding. Just kidding, Daniel. All right? But right? I love Wayne Dyer. Recently I was listening to something he said. He goes, look, I don't care if you call it God, Source, Universe, Louise, Henry, whatever you call it. I think it was the best statement. He goes, and he quoted someone. He said, some of you I'm certain have heard this. He said, you don't get wet from just saying the word water. So whatever you call water, it doesn't make you wet. Meaning that whatever your interactions are with a creator, a source, God, whatever you want to call it, the reality is that the only way that you connect is through action, right? It's through action. Physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, heart, soul to soul, communions within yourself, whatever you want to talk. So just remember that within you, I'm just giving you credit for who you are. Because most of the time, you won't. And it's not a place of arrogance. It's not a place of anger. It's not a place of, well, I'll tell people who it is and how it is and what it's going to be. And sometimes we get so fixated on what we believe to be right, and we then manipulate and we try to get people to conform to our way. And, we'll have our little undertones and our little statements and our little comments and our little things we'll say to think that we can persuade and maneuver, manipulate more accurately. But I would just tell you that you have the answers in you. And it doesn't mean that we don't need each other. Because if you're trying to heal your life, I deeply believe that there is no healing in isolation. You won't heal your life alone. You won't heal yourself by yourself. The beauty of humanity and the interactions of one with another is there's great healing that occurs through that process within our lives. Or we become more, maybe there's other words you could use, we can become more, there's more growth, interaction with one another. But I do deeply believe, and I think it is relevant, that the answers are already in you. So stop looking every minute of every day for someone else to give you the answer. In your quietest of moments, you know your path. In your quietest of moments, in your best states of mind, closing your eyes and feel and think, the answers will come. And it doesn't have to be grandiose. You don't have to have angels in your room. You don't have to have heaven's party. You don't have to have magnificent trumpets going off in your head and in your world. It could be as quiet and as still as you just simply know. And when you know, here's the great charge of humanity. Act. Act. Because we seldom do. Because then we'll get our answer, and then we'll be like, oh my gosh, well, if I did that, now what? Well, then this would happen, that would happen, this would happen, that would happen, and then we forget about that, and then we come running over to Rick and go, hey Rick, what do you think I should do? And then we get ourselves off the hook because someone else can tell us the answer. You know. You know you should prospect. I know you know that. I know you can make calls. I know you can do it with a beautiful space of gratitude and thankfulness in your heart. That as you meet people, to serve them, to love them, to care for them, to navigate their life to becoming more and to becoming better, that it can happen. So as you just take a step back in your life and you start to reflect, you start to think, there's a simple statement. There's a reason the book is called Think and Grow Rich. The key word here is think. Not have someone else think for me, not have someone else do the thinking for me, not someone else tell me everything I should do, but think. But here's the deal. Don't think too long, don't think too much, and don't disconnect your thoughts to your heart. Connect the two, and all of a sudden you'll know the path and the directions that your life should take. And I am so convinced of that the most difficult moments of my life are when I know answers and I choose different paths. That is when I know. I know when my ego is speaking to buy a certain thing or to do certain things and to have certain things versus the peace and almost the absolute sure knowledge of what my path should be. So I would challenge you to stop letting people create your path. I would challenge you to stop the nonsense of disbelief that you don't know, because I know you know. Now the question isn't don't you know, or do you know, do or don't know. The question is, the ultimate question is, once you know. She was yawning in my presentation, just so you know. Lindsay is back there, full-fledged yawning. Is it not boring, Mike?
That was
No,
the
she
worst
was
timing for Jan too.
She was apt.
She knew.
She already
Okay.
knows.
Okay, I just just yawning, Daniel. Yawning. All right, no yawning. That's good. Okay, but here's the deal: is that you act, right? You act. That's the biggest challenge for all of us. And here's the deal, right? In fairness, like I know someone like a Lindsay who, under the hardest of circumstances, will get up in the morning and go exercise, right? There's people who will get up with a screaming child, no matter the challenges. There will be moments where there are some in this room, no matter how difficult the day has been, that you will jump on a phone and you will make your calls. And then there'll be those people who will huff and puff to go get their kid, not out of gratitude who's screaming, but out of absolute obligation and absolute anger. Then there's people who stomp to the gym, not because they want to go, but because they just have to go, and they get mad about it. Then there's people who huff and puff as they stand at a home and knock on the door, and they all of a sudden are so angry, bothered, upset, and fear-based thinking that they don't even want to make the door knock or make the call if it's on the phone. So the question I'm going to ask you is that it's not only how you act, it's the energy of how you go through that action. Just remember, you can have all the answers in the world, but with no action, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. So with that, I'll close with this. The single greatest aha that I have had in my entire life, of all the things that I have seen, of all the things that I have seen to help myself the most, it is the one thing that I am most passionate about above all things. It is simply the real message of this company. And that is that I am obsessed within myself and for you to becoming more. A long time ago, I lost my desire to have to acquire certain things, to have to buy certain things. And I think there's a journey that we all go through where that becomes the focal point. You know, buy this, have this. And it's not that I don't like to have nice things. Go do fun things. Go on great trips. Travel in the right style. But it's not what drives me. What I've realized that those are all a byproduct of who I become. That they're all a byproduct of the success that happens for each one of us in our lives. If you want something that you want to acquire, buy, invest in, go see, do something for someone, contribute to, whatever it may be, it's all going to be in the dynamics of who you become. So as you move through your life, as you move through this craziness of real estate that we all live in, just go back to what I started with. Ask yourself better questions. Questions that will assist you into becoming more. When I became aware of that, the question was simply this. Some of you may want to write it down, and that is, who do I have to become to earn a certain amount of money, or blank dollars? Who do I have to become to sell a certain number of homes? Whatever the numbers are, right? Who do I have to become to lead a certain number of people? Who do I have to become to recruit a certain number of people? Who do I have to become to do a certain number of real estate loans? Who do I have to become to acquire and assemble more title? It doesn't matter. In the end, it's who we become. There's not going to be a checks and balances of what you acquire, but I believe deeply that you will self-reflect as to did you waste this time or use this time to become more. It'll have nothing to do with your economics. You may choose real estate, sales, and you may make an extraordinary amount of income. But in the end, no one's going to wage you based on that. They're going to talk about who you were, the impact that you made, the difference that you made in the lives of others. It'll be who you became. So in the end of the day, I just really deeply believe that if we want to earn more money, we have to then realize that it's about who we become. And as we become more, we earn more. The byproduct in the statements I've said for years, and you've heard them, and that is the statement of Earl Nightingale, who said, give me heat, as he's talking about the kitchen stove, and you can finish this, right? Give me heat, and then what does he say? I'll put the wood in. Then give me wood. That's not how it works. Sometimes we sit there and go, oh wow, they're so successful, look at that car. Oh wow, they're so successful, look at what they're dressed in. Oh wow, look at the fantasy of lies in their social media. They must be really successful. Just kidding. But I mean, we'll look at all these things, right? We'll look at social media, we'll look at what they drive, where they live, and we'll say, oh, they're a success. I just want to remind you that is the afterthought or after events of success. You were successful, then you bought the new car. You were successful, then you bought the new house. You were successful, then you went on the first class 4 seasons luxury jet around the world. Because you were successful first. Meaning you figured out how to communicate, you figured out how to ask questions, you figured out how to prospect, you figured out how to make a difference, you figured out how to sell, you figured out how to communicate, you figured out how to handle objections, you figured out every angle of this life that we call real estate so that you are a success. And then the money, the wealth, the homes, the travel, the giving back, the charity, and all that you want to do becomes your reality. So just remember to declare, I want that, is nice. But a better statement is, I'm going to do what it takes to get that. Because that has to do with who you become. And that's the reason why I don't talk about leads in the company. Leads, when 97% of this state can sell the home in which they live in and have money and equity. You don't need an internet lead. It's a great resource, that's great, but you don't need it. You don't need a FSBO. You don't need an expired. You don't need anything, because every single household out there has someone they know who wants to buy a home, knows someone, and they could sell that home. So how many more leads of the 750,000 homes across the Wasatch Front specifically do you need? How many more leads do you need? You have 750,000 of them. But if you can't communicate, if you can't talk, if you can't pick up the phone, if you act like you've come across the plains like a pioneer, like if you were on the Mayflower type of effort to pick up a phone and knock on a door because it was so hard and so difficult, and you say in perspective, this is so hard. Put perspective. Ask the guys at Kennecott. Ask the guys who are out holding the road sign who say stop and go. Ask them if it's hard. You know, have your skin bake against the asphalt and you're like in your air conditioning unit and you're like, it's 3 degrees too hot in here. I can't prospect. The phones don't work. I can't pick up a cell phone. Oh, okay. I just want to give perspective to what you bitch about and complain about. just to give you an observation. That just slipped out, Michael. I don't know how to say it. If I didn't offend you, I ended up in offense. But my point to you is just stop it. Take action. The answers are within you. Ask yourself better questions. Focus on the right stuff. And create habits, rituals, and disciplines that build the life that you want. I'm cheering for Jessica to have her helicopter and her private island. She's talked about that for decades. I know that. I want her to have it. But I know it has nothing to do with wanting. It has to do with who she becomes, how she leads, and the questions she asks, and the way she builds her life. And here's the cool part. Even if she didn't achieve it, even if she didn't get it, Is it a failure? No. Because the thing is that her focuses may change. And the deal is, right, it's always this. You got to have a goal. You can always change the goal, but don't change it for 90 days. Got to have a goal. Can always change the goal. Just got to stay for it for 90 days. And just see if the goal was the right goal. See if you could achieve it. See if you could accomplish it. Nothing wrong with changing goals. Nothing wrong with that. But always have them. Know where you're going. Know where you're going. Okay. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Nothing?
I believe Jess will get her island.
She will get her island. You may have been the helicopter. Maybe Kenzie is the island. Are you the island? You're the island? Okay, Kenzie's the island. You can use your helicopter to go to her island. There you go. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Kenzie told me that she might like me enough in my older age that she might invite me to the island. And I said, that's okay. I said, I'll have 3 of them. So I go, yeah, I just was out. Okay? Thoughts, comments? Helpful?
Love it. Yeah.
Guys, just real estate is so easy. It's not about the real estate that's the problem. Yeah, the greatest sale that you'll ever make is happening right here between your 2 ears. It's happening right here within your heart. It's happening as you walk through with some levels of certainty and some levels of authority to who you are. The real estate becomes the easy part. They'll follow the strongest leader. They'll follow the strongest person in the room. And not out of fear, but because they know that you are the best person to lead them. And that's the beauty of the whole thing. So go for it. Make it happen. Thanks for spending time with me, and it's great to see you guys.
I know, right?